Welcome to Literary Deep Dives and Discussions. This is our third episode in a series called Who Wrote It? 4 authors, 4 pages. I have with me here today 3 authors who will introduce themselves shortly. 4 of us have submitted a single page of our work. Those pages have been randomly assigned numbers 1 through 4. What no one here knows is who wrote which page. So by the end of this episode, we're going to find out how well writers truly recognize one another's voices. Here's how the episode will unfold. We'll begin with introductions. Each author will briefly introduce their author name, their genre, who they write for, 1 or 2 interesting things about themselves or their series, and where readers can find them. After introductions, we will move into the reading and guessing portion. We will go in numerical order based on the page assigned. For each page, the assigned reader will read it out loud. Then the group will briefly discuss initial impressions, and then we will each guess which author wrote the page. I, as the host, will record those guesses. At this point, the true author is going to remain silent, and then we'll go through the subsequent pages. Once the guessing is complete, we'll go to the reveal phrase when each author, pages 1 through 4, will reveal who wrote that page. So with that surprise as to whoever wrote the page, the author can share why they selected that page, that scene, what the writing experience was like, or any other interesting behind the scene details about it. So that portion is really just open for whatever discussion. So the goal is very simple. We explore the voice, perspective, and the subtle fingerprints that make an author unmistakable. So with that, we're going to begin. We'll start with introductions, have Bree go first, then Reign, then Conrad.
Hi everyone, my name is Bree Martinson, and that is my author name as well. I write a lot of romantasy. I do have an adult series that is also a dark fantasy. My published book, I write for teen, adolescent, fantasy, romance. I kind of say there's a little cringe in there because obviously teens are pretty cringy and angsty sometimes. 1 or 2 interesting things about my book is I am a huge hopeless romantic, so I have to always sprinkle in how the different perspectives, because I always wanted that in books when I was growing up reading. I wanted to see both points of view because obviously the matter of perspective is a very fascinating thing, and what one person is thinking is not going to be the same exact thing as another person is thinking, especially when it comes to males and females. And I wanted to represent that dynamic, and especially with adolescents, because it was very interesting when I was going through that experience. Ironically, I find it very fascinating how I write about more canine perspectives when I am a huge cat lover. I love cats, but I wrote about canines. And you can find my books on Amazon.
And I am Reign Reeves Pearson. I'm a multi-genre author, but my heart is in horror. Southern Gothic is my go-to. I write for the weirdos, the girls, the gays, the theys, 35 and up. I make sure all of my main characters are usually 30 and up. They've seen some stuff. They've been there and done that. But I write for people who always felt like they too were strange and unusual. So interesting facts. I usually dictate my books instead of typing them out because my hands don't work really well. I usually put a lav mic on my phone and do my laundry and write a book at the same time. And I always have to sneak an Easter egg about my favorite things into every one of my books. So it's either going to be Final Fantasy VII, D&D, or Sleep Token. There's a reference in every one of my books. Right now, I'm on Amazon, but I also do a lot of in-person author signings. So if you're in the Houston area and you want to grab a copy, look it up because I'm everywhere. But otherwise, find me on Amazon for now.
My name is Conrad Tanner. That's the name I write under. My genre is kind of a mix of mystery, drama, a little spice for the main character, and some paranormal mixed in there. Melodramas, basically. Therefore, anyone 18 and up, no one really in particular, just in that age. An interesting fact, as a writer, I have to write all my scenes out by hand on paper, just a rough draft, and then once I have it all written down, I come back to my computer and clean up the writing. Hopefully it sounds as good as it does in my head. Find my books on Amazon, and 2 of them are also on Barnes & Noble website.
I am Lieske. My genre is speculative mystery thriller. So my work is aimed at readers who enjoy sophisticated detective fiction in the tradition of classical investigative narratives, along with modern psychological complexity and speculative thriller elements. So if anybody likes moral tension, atmosphere, layered conspiracies, and character-driven mystery, that is who I write for. Interesting thing about me, since everybody's kind of going with interesting writing things, a fun fact is I never learned how to properly type. It's funny because my books are very, very long and I have a lot of words in there and I type fast, but I do a very epic chicken across the board. That is what I do. If anybody's ever like, I can't be an author because I don't type, yes, you can.
Yes, you can, because I don't.
There we go. I'm not the only one. So my readers can find me on Amazon. I'm also on Barnes & Nobles online, Walmart online, Google Books. It used to be on KU, took it off of that. But I do sell discount hardcovers directly through my website. So now that we know who's at the table, let us begin with page number 1. Who has that?
The increasing prickling feeling Dylan had felt moments before suddenly felt more like a jolt of electricity coursing through him, causing the hair on his arms to stand up. He felt Blythe's hand massaging his knee under his hand as she guided the SUV over the winding, tree-lined lane, and the dream of the young man with his girlfriend driving the same type of lane with her hand massaging his knee flashed in his mind's eye as Blythe took the curve in the lane up ahead. And he knew with certainty what he would see. To his right, on a sloping open glen in a thicket of river birch trees, was a stone cottage. His breath caught as his heart tripped and began to race. Blythe was pointing at the cottage and saying something, but all Dylan could hear was the whoosh, whoosh, whooshing of the blood pumping in his ears. As the cottage passed by, Dylan couldn't take his eyes off it, and time itself seemed to crawl, and a haze seemed to pulse around the cottage, and Dylan wasn't sure if he were seeing it in the present or in a hazy, awake dream state. Beads of sweat prickled his forehead, and he blinked several times and forced himself to look straight ahead, and his eyes widened when he saw the large Georgian-style mansion standing stately above the sloping glen like an eagle high on its nest. Blythe steered the SUV in the circular driveway and came to a stop. With his mouth gaping open, Dylan stared out the window at the same house from his dream.
That was mysterious. I thought that was mysterious.
Yes. It's like
Very.
nightmares. Great. I was like, great. Of course, we've had premonition or dream. Yes, that's always a great sign.
Any guesses? Who might have wrote that?
I'm gonna guess Conrad.
I was going to guess Conrad. Yeah. Because just from what I've pieced from you, Bree, and from I was like, everything else that's already been described, I'm guessing Conrad. So.
Okay. What say you, Conrad? Are you going to guess yourself or someone else?
Can you guess yourself?
You can. Some people do, but I
Oh,
try
how
to
funny.
discourage it. Well, I'm going to guess Reign just so that there's someone else on the table.
But to keep track of your guesses so you know.
Yeah, I'm writing them down. Okay, very atmospheric. Page number 2.
Here is what I think, she continued, slowly rising from her chair, like a jaguar sizing its prey. I think you convinced Williams to initiate the dream studies. You used it to pull Prescott into your orbit and made her your shadow. Then, in collusion with Hastings, you hid footage, perhaps even created some of it. Hastings, burdened by guilt or perhaps frightened by the chaos you unleashed, tried to escape, only to end up comatose from whatever mess you and Arian set in motion. Abernathy stood half out of her seat, hands on the table, leaning across, eye level with Alma. It was a pose of intimidation, a challenge. You staged his disappearance, placed him in the state he is in now, and this story of a phantom woman we have yet to verify. A distraction manipulated from your mind and supported by Prescott to send us on a wild goose chase, one that I believe you planned. She let the words hang. How would you counter that? Alma blinked slowly, allowing the seconds to pass, adding some weight to the moment before giving any indication of a response. Through that silence, her expression did not harden or twist. Blink, blink, and then it simply dropped. Shoulders sagged slightly, and she looked down with the slightest shake of her head, almost in disbelief. Then a dry, almost incredulous laugh escaped her. With all due respect, ma'am, that is utterly absurd. Alma's head lifted again, her eyes clearing with a flame of confident resolve. Do you honestly believe I would invite someone into this nightmare? Do you understand what it is to live as I do? Yanked into the subconscious of strangers, used for an ability that once had me tortured and locked in a cell away from my own country under a deception of international unity. Alma's voice rose, controlled, but thick with fire. What exactly would I gain from this? Or better yet, what would Prescott? Do you really think she would willingly throw away her future, her health, and possibly her sanity just to play a co-conspirator in some fantasy you have crafted out of convenience? She shook her head with an incredulous scoff. None of that makes sense. As for Oblivion, I have lapsed into it only twice, both incidents being reported. Yes, I have been unmonitored most nights since my reinstatement, but after everything, after all those years in containment, do you truly think I would bide my time just to hatch a conspiracy, particularly one with happenings spaced over a year apart? Gaze locked with Abernathy's, the tension in the room radiated to where Azure sat, amazed by her mentor's brevity in the observation room. That same fire blazing within Alma now sparked something in her own mind. Azure felt incredulous at the severe lack of consideration being given to their situation by the internal head. And if you are concerned about fabricated narratives, Alma continued, her tone now lowering once more, perhaps it is worth considering whether your desperation to protect your post has made me the convenient scapegoat. After all, it is easier to put me under with some fantastical speculation and close the case than to answer for your normal agents' repeated slip-ups. She leaned slightly forward, a single brow raised, almost mocking. How would you counter that? I know exactly who wrote that.
Oh, no. Well, now Rain's laughing. Was it Rain?
I don't know. Could be, could not be.
I'm guessing
guess.
AL.
That's who I was gonna guess.
Okay, 2 for me. How lucky am
Yeah.
I? Well, I'm guessing. Oh, I already guessed Rain. I can't do that.
Yeah,
Dang
what
it.
is that? You gotta take someone else.
I'm so bad at these games, I swear.
I'm gonna guess AL.
3 for me. Well, I'm gonna guess Conrad. I'll be the odd duck
Right.
out on all of these. How about that? It was mysterious. Okay. Number 3. Strolling through the elm trees, nibbling on the berries a bit, and then I finally spotted the river that split the north from the east. I sat on a rock that was a few feet away from the flowing river, the usual spot I usually sat to think and get away from the business of the village. The bright colors from the sky were warm today. I basked in the calmness of my surroundings when I heard a shuffling of underbrush from the other side of the river. Thinking it was a deer, I readied my bow. Pulling an arrow out of my satchel, I aimed. But I knew better when my vision cleared. A deer had small brown eyes. These eyes, peering out of the trees, were too close together, and big, vibrant, dark gray eyes with a Caribbean tint. I was being stared at immensely. I lowered my bow and froze, slowed down my breath, and stared back at those eyes. A few moments later, a large, dark black werewolf crawled out of the nysa and stood on the other side, on the edge of the river, not taking an eye off me. His eyes were calm and shining with interest. He did not seem hostile. His breath was normal and slow as he examined me. He was most definitely a rogue, but why wasn't he being hostile towards me like a rogue should be? He was not baring his teeth, and he was not growling at all, just staring. His fur wasn't matted, and he looked very well taken care of, unlike what a rogue was assumed to be. I wanted to say something, but what was there exactly to say? So I didn't think that much. I just spoke. Hello? His ears pricked, and then he shifted forms.
Bree.
Bree.
I'm gonna guess Rain. It seems pretty horror.
So we got 2 for Rain, 1 for Bree. I am going to guess Bree as well. So we got a lovely tie right there. All right, number 4.
The fog came up from the bayou, curling across Highway 82 in thick gray fingers that turned the headlights useless. Dominic Blackwood drove through it anyway, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the ceramic urn in the passenger seat. Almost there, he told Eli, though Eli was 3 months dead and past caring about destinations. The bourbon was warm between his thighs, half empty, the cap lost somewhere around Baton Rouge. Dominic took another drink and felt it slide down his throat, burning just enough to remind him he was still capable of feeling something. The radio had given up an hour ago, dissolving into static that sounded almost like voices if you listened long enough. He'd listened. They hadn't said anything worth hearing. The turnoff appeared suddenly, a gap in the trees marked by a mailbox that had rusted into abstract sculpture, Maison de Sel, though the house hadn't belonged to his family in any real sense for decades. His grandmother had died when Dominic was 12, and nobody had wanted the place after. Too remote, too rotted, too full of particular sadness that collects in abandoned southern homes like water in low places. But it was his now, and he had nowhere else to go. The driveway was more memory than road. Crushed shells and mud that grabbed at his tires, Spanish moss hanging so low it scraped the roof of his car. The trees pressed close, and beyond them the wetlands spread out in all directions, alive with electric screaming of cicadas and tree frogs. When the house emerged from the fog, Dominic almost laughed. White clapboard gone gray with mildew, the second story sagging slightly to the left like it was tired of holding itself upright. The wraparound porch had collapsed in places, revealing the crawl space beneath, dark and damp, probably full of cottonmouths. A single magnolia tree stood in what used to be the front yard, its branches heavy with blossoms that glowed faintly in the headlights.
I like how I feel like this came full circle. We started off with a car ride, now we're ending with a car ride.
Really ironic. That's
Right.
Conrad and Reign have a lot of similarities. If I'm guessing, that was Reign's writing.
I heard the word Southern and I just hooked on that.
Right.
I'm gonna guess.
I guessed everyone else already, so I guess myself now. Because I think I picked everyone else already.
I'll guess Reign too.
Okay, so Reign's picking herself.
I was like, I think I've picked everyone else already, so.
Yeah, I'm the same, so I have to guess
Twice,
Conrad.
so.
Page number 1. Who wrote it?
That would be me.
Haha, Conrad, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, that scene was really important for the character because in that moment, he's only, not to give too much away, he is seeing things in his dreams, so it didn't seem real to him. And when he saw that cottage and the feelings that were, coming from him, and then the house, that moment he realized, oh, this is not just images in his head, but this place was real. And now he's having to face it, and he does not want to face it. He just wants to run from it. And I thought that was really powerful.
Where did that come from when you were writing it?
I just listened to the characters, and it was there in my head, I guess. He was showing me what he was going through and the emotions, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting, fun scene. I just kind of write down what the characters are showing me.
Very organic, I like that.
My own imagination. Very three-dimensional, and what I'm seeing is what they're showing, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does. So page number 2, who wrote that? Oh yes, I wrote that. I'm looking at the tallies and thinking back. So when we did this, all the pages that I sent in, I did for all 5 groups. They got shuffled. I didn't know which was where, and then I can't keep track of the numbers. So that was one of my favorite interrogation scenes. I remember the day that I wrote it. I had a summer review with my new supervisor of my previous employer and my boss that day, and it was one of those very heated kind of interviews, I guess. They were all employed in Colorado. I was employed at Wyoming at the time, and it was an educational nonprofit. So you can imagine that things clashed a little bit. And I remember walking away from that just thinking, what do I do with this tension? And I turned to keep writing on my book, and this interrogation scene was birds. One of the reasons it's my favorite is because I can see from both sides of it. In fact, I have a podcast that's literally coming out while we're doing this podcast that has me talking about it. So, to everybody viewing this podcast, watch last week's podcast and you'll get a little bit about that. But the context of it is that the protagonist's mentor is in custody being framed essentially for some illegal technological stuff that she didn't do. She is a very traumatized character, which is something that I have covered in a previous podcast, but she's always been very loyal in her position, and it's her boss that's interrogating her, Chief Abernathy. So there's the boss situation, but the boss is also a little bit on edge because her job is on the line for a completely unrelated matter. And the person that she put up, well, the two people that she put up to higher positions, one of them sitting in front of her that she's interrogating, and the other one sitting next beside her, and she could lose her job if he finds her out of line. So everybody's on eggshells, and to me, that kind of tension is a lot of fun to write.
So do you find that you pull from, like, you're saying like this was, you already had that tension from dealing with, supervisors or a new job, or do you tend to maybe like process and work through events like through your writing, like, because that's what this sounds like it could be, which I love.
It's a mix of that, actually. It's also a little bit of a mix of what Conrad does. Some scenes are like that I do. My day just kind of works itself in there and I make sense of it. But a lot of them are just, what the character needs to say, what the character needs to do. Remember, there's a good third of the book is literally just based off of recurring memory or recurring dreams that I had as a child, written out. So it's a modge podge of things, is what I'd say. Page number 3, who wrote that one?
I wrote that one. I tried really hard to find a page that didn't give away my characters' names and didn't give away my book, but the werewolf gave it away. I did not catch that in there. It was also a really good scene to pinpoint. So that was actually from my first book.
Ooh, I love that.
And it is the Talarian Chronicles. So the Talarian is like all over in the first part of the book because I'm explaining the world and everything. What's happening in the story is pretty much following the main characters, Aliana and Asher, not only Aliana's journey to becoming the Werewolf Queen, but also her journey into uncovering certain things about the separate clans of the castle where she's from and the Roe clan, which is where Asher comes from, and their journey together and growing together and everything. That's why I picked this scene, because I thought it was such a pivotal point to their introduction to each other and kind of starts outlaying the perspective of one another, because the next chapter is, or the next 2 chapters, is Asher's perception of his first meeting Aliana. So you get both perspective points. And that was something I thought was really important in my writing of this series because of the 2 different perspectives of male and female and the way they interpreted things, perceived each other, the way they felt about each other. It was really interesting to write different perspectives.
Okay, I was to say, so where do you think that inspiration came from to really strive like the understanding of dual perspectives to really make sure you do that justice and put it out there? Because it's not, you see people like they talk about writing women badly, but also I've seen lots of people write men badly. People can write people badly, but you're really trying to dig in and make sure that it's well represented on both sides. So was that just something that came like organically for you, or?
Thank you so much for asking that question. Yes and no. I guess I just was always wondering what other people were thinking through my life, and I was always very fascinated with psychology and the way people work, like why people think the way they do, and especially the dynamics between males and females, because I've come to learn that males are such physical beings and females can be such like emotional beings, and that's like represented in certain psychology. And so, even though I'm a huge hopeless romantic and I try to write out the male's perspective a little more romantically than what may be a commonality, um, I still want to not portray him as, like fake in a way, if that makes sense.
No, I get
But
it. Yeah.
it's really wanting multiple perspectives in stories because I'm always wanting to know.
Yes.
I love that. I have read that entire book, and I think Bree did an excellent job. So, just putting that out there. Me too. I have it coming in the mail shortly, so.
Good. I've got to find you. I'll find you on Amazon later because my TBR is looking a little lean after the flu. I went through so many books.
The flu will do that to you.
It's like, what else could I do? Lay in bed and read. Oh no! Like, oh, my steak is too juicy and my lobster's too buttery.
Page number 4, then.
It's like we already know because we ruled out everyone else. It was me. It was me.
Tell us about it.
So okay, I have my book too. This is my book Love Like Ruin. It's came out on Valentine's Day. This is actually a trio of short stories that I wrote that were inspired by the first Sleep Token album, which is just 3 songs. And so I basically listened to it on repeat. And that is the second story. It's called Salt and the Sparrow Queen. And that is the very opening. This man has lost everything. He has hit rock bottom, in the most ironic way, because he is actually, he's kind of a washed up singer. He's a little bit of a has-been. He is going to find his life again after his partner has died. And then he comes up on his house and realizes that it's as fallen apart as everything else is right now for him. That was probably the saddest story to write of the 3. They're all absolutely devastating, but that's the point. I really like to write about grief and the point at which grief becomes more than something we all experience and turns into something predatory, where it really feels like it's taken over your life without your consent, and it takes away your agency because you're so mired in it. And I feel like, because we all grieve, so I really wanted to see, though, what happens when it turns into its own thing.
When you write, is it a kind of like an exploration of you when you are touching these deeper emotions, just to discover something that you don't necessarily personally know, or to discover it deeper?
I think because I have lived a lot, and I do have PTSD. And so part of this is actually a safer way to explore and go through these emotions that I didn't have the chance to navigate before. Now that I'm in a safe place and I am doing my therapy, taking my meds, and taking care of myself, I'm able to go, okay, now we can work through grief. We can work through even jealousy and loneliness and even happiness in a safe way, because it doesn't have to be performative.
I love that. Just kind of going off of that, I'm curious. This is a question to you all, and we can answer it in the order of Bree, Reign, then Conrad. Where is it that you derive your inspiration from when writing?
My inspiration is mostly from dreams and experiences and emotions, like Rain said, because a lot of my writing is actually in the form of poetry. So creating a novel is a different experience than poetry in a sense, because poetry is almost like this, I don't know, it feels so raw, and then like a novel, you want it to have finesse and you want the structure of it and you want it to come together and make sense, which you do want that in poetry in a sense, but it's like a whole different world and a whole different journey writing a novel. So that's why I can relate it to dreams, because it's like I'm in a different story, I'm in a different realm. So it's fascinating to create, or have the freedom to create my own world, and that's why I love writing fantasy so much.
Oh, I love that. As far as I go, it comes from a lot of different places. With my first book that I wrote, That came from actually a hospital stay. It was really traumatic, and while I was there, because I needed sleep meds to go to sleep finally, because I was so freaked out about going to sleep, so they gave me meds to help me sleep. And I had this like absolutely amazing like fever dream of Henry Rollins telling me to write this book. And Henry Rollins has never led me wrong, so I wrote the book.
Yes.
I'm like, I can't argue with Henry Rollins, right? I'm like, you can't do it. So many of them, though, come from, I'm very like, what if, what if, what if? I feel like a lot of it kind of is rooted in like older, like writing fan fiction and stuff like that, where you're writing alternate universes and things like that. I will be watching something or my kids will tell me something and I'm like, but what if? But what if, or, and so I feel like it ties into a lot of, and then of course dreams, like I think a lot of writers find their inspiration in dreams. I have very vivid dreams and I will absolutely take those into a book, especially if I'm trying to make them make sense. But I really love or music. Obviously I have a whole Sleep Token inspired book. I will sit there and listen to songs, and I do have songs that I will listen to on repeat depending on scenes that I want to write and the emotion that I want to convey in that book, in that scene, in that chapter, whatever. They're usually sad, but I feel like so much of it comes from, like my husband bought me a blanket for Christmas. We do blankets every Christmas Eve. Everyone gets a blanket, and I loved this blanket. I was so happy to get this blanket. It's a Sleep Token blanket, and as I was looking at it a few days later, I was like, we realized it was like a AI knockoff blanket because the name of the album on the bottom was wrong. And I was like, no, I love it. That is hilarious to me. Because of course that would happen. And so I actually wrote a whole story. Like I've outlined a whole novel based on the wrongness of the blanket. That I took that and all of a sudden I was like, what if there's a town that has actually been living their lives according to constellations that were incorrect the whole time, but it gave them comfort because this is what they've grown up under, but it's actually wrong. So you find it in the weirdest places where you're like, what if, what the wheels just start turning? And I was like, this is great. But at this point, my Atticus is getting real tired of me because there's so many books in there. It's like, could you slow down?
I love how you tied music into it, because you're absolutely right. Like listening to the right kind of music, like will set a tone almost, and like to pull your emotion out, to pull you into that moment. So I love that you brought that up.
I was a music major in college. So yeah, it like is the easiest way to like absolutely pull me into a particular feeling or emotion.
I actually just started like learning that about myself. To sink me in deeper, because like sometimes my inspiration is fleeting and I'm like in the shower when I get ideas and I'm like, I can't write this out right now.
It's me when I exercise, but I've got the music going and then I'm like holding the plank and where's the paper?
I get inspired by for a story idea. For sometimes it can be just the topic that I'm going to write about I find interesting, and then characters start just popping up. And for example, in dreams, I was inspired to write my first book, which that scene that was read tonight was not from that one. That was from my second book. I was inspired to write the first book through a dream that I had of one of the characters. Just it happened one night, and that dream never came back. And I just spent the next day just thinking, well, what was that? And then I thought, well, what if there was this man who's been having this recurring dream of this one other character, but he didn't know who he was and why he was coming to him. And then it just was a long journey from that to publication. And then the second book, the topic of that story is just interest in the story, in the topic that it's about. So, yep, dreams and just stuff that I find interesting. And then the characters just,
I love that.
And then they take it.
It's kind of like Reign was saying, it's, the what if, the what if, the what if, and your brain's just turning at everything.
What if? Mary Higgins Clark used to say, what if? And then the story can just come from that. And that simple question, what if?
I think that's what really connects us as authors, is that there's so much inspiration that we derive things from that is similar, and yet it's so different, and it's fascinating to find those different unique takes. I did mention that I had dreams in mind, but I guess for me, it's the subconscious. I am so utterly obsessed with the subconscious. I don't care so much about the why of things. I want to know the what is happening inside of you. I want to know what's happening around you, what's happening to connect us. So that is my big thing that drives my inspiration. Is I could be sitting anywhere doing anything, and the moment the what if strikes that bit of subconscious in me, I'm like, I gotta write things. And it annoys my husband sometimes because we'll be sitting there in the middle of a movie and I'll be like, oh, I need to write that down. And or he'll say something, I'm like, hold it. There's sticky notes all over the house. And he's like, I mean, sometimes he'll even come up, and this is when he gets excited. He'll have these wide eyes and he'll look at me and he'll say, I have a quote for you. And he'll say something brilliant. And I'm like, yes. Do I ever use it? Sometimes, but there's so much around. I don't think as authors we will ever have enough time in our lifetimes to write down all the things we could derive inspiration from.
Amen. Oh my goodness.
Amen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's why I like poetry, because I can just like I have so many unfinished poems just because it's kind of like sticky notes, scattered sticky notes, but it's all these unfinished poems of topics that are just scattered, and I'm like,
Are there any deep messages in your books, in your series, just across the board, that you want readers to take away from your works?
Man.
There's so much dynamic
Yes.
that because I'm such an overthinker, I want like everything presented. I guess just pulling out people's emotions and pulling out like the reader's perception. So even though I have the different perceptions of the other characters, I still want the reader's perception just the same, to see if they're interpreting it similarly how the characters would be interpreting it. And the depth of that, I guess, I don't know, there's just so much random stuff that comes out of while I'm writing that I never thought too deeply about, but it comes out deeply, you know, if that makes sense. Like, I guess the dynamic of losing a parent, the dynamic of death in general, like Reign said on grief, and grief is definitely a huge thing that can make or break somebody. So I guess inspiration is the simple question, or the simple answer. I want inspiration out of all my books.
I know that so much of mine, and I definitely encourage people, it's to always be looking deeper. Look beneath the surface, look beneath all the pretty packaging, beneath what you're being sold or told or encouraged to do by the powers that be, by anybody. Dig deeper. Trust your own intuition. That is a big one that I go into, is trusting yourself, learning to actually get to know yourself, because so many people, we're so numbed and we don't know who we are, what we want to do. We just kind of go along checking off all the boxes of all the things we should do, and then you hit a point where you're like, who am I? And you see all of these wonderful, glorious things, and it's like, why do you actually want that? Why do you want to do that? Why can't you be brave enough to live a life that makes you content versus a life that other people are impressed with? And I really touch on, I do market a lot of, I tell people, you know, all the time, there's a lot of feminine rage. And I want to see women comfortable with being angry enough. Don't smile. Don't smile. Don't, you know, when someone, you should smile. No, I'm gonna scowl. Like, you can choke. I want them to be okay with being angry enough and loud enough and taking up the space. You know, I have daughters, I have sons. I want them all to be okay with the full spectrum of emotions, but I especially want my sons to be okay with being soft, and I want my daughters to be okay with being angry. Get angry when you need to, like, take up the space. Please learn how to grieve before it absolutely destroys you.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get to that one. Like, that took a lot. That was the hardest one to work through, by the way, was everything else. I felt like it was easier to choose guilt over grief, because grief felt final, but with guilt, I could still bargain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, especially, there's a lot of that in my books, where there's a lot of the guilt and the shame and the bargaining and the all constant bargain making. There's a lot of that. I'll do anything. Okay, would you really though? What if it meant that you're literally destroying the world to keep bargaining for this one thing. Just grieve and let it be final.
Yes, epic.
Just to keep an open mind, because I know a lot of people, if you're telling someone you're writing a book and kind of give them an outline of what it is, they kind of look at you funny, like, well, how do you know something like that could even happen? So just keep your mind open, and reading is supposed to be entertainment, and you know, that's pretty much it. Just entertainment and keep your mind open.
I guess for myself, I really want my readers to see what's inside of them. I like really exploring the power that's within us that we often overlook. We like to be victims to ourselves. We like to victimize others. We're often so very myopic as to what is real around us and what is not real because of all these different influences that are messing with our heads. And it's really good to just kind of peel back those layers and see really what is the message that is being thrown at me? What is the message I'm telling myself? What can I do to switch that to empower myself? What can I do to switch that to empower others? I think there's a lot of harmony to be had in this world when we really dig within and see, like, truly at our core who we are and see others the same, see people as people instead of objects or nuisances or all those other things that we want to define them as. For me, it's about that deeper connection. And that's part of why my series is called the Unseen Operative series, because it's the unseen operative in all of us. What's going on inside of us.
Like, as you were saying that, I was like, oh, so we get a lot of similar, like, we're very similar like that. I like that.
We are, yeah. As you're talking, I'm totally connecting with you, and especially, you know, those deeper things, mourning and being okay with all the spectrum of emotions. We all have them. We manifest them in different ways. It's so good to explore these things, and inspiration as well, and entertainment as well. There's so much beauty in all of these things just being captured. My final question for this podcast for all of you is, what is your number one piece of advice to any aspiring authors?
This is such a hard question for me sometimes because everybody like takes advice differently or could use a certain type of advice. But honestly, if you enjoy something, who cares if nobody else likes it? Like, you enjoy it, put it out there. There will be people that like it. And if you enjoy it, don't stop. Nurture that baby. Like, if you have a passion and you start out and you don't think you're very good, nurture it and it'll get better, because looking back at your growth is one of the greatest and most satisfying things I've ever probably felt in my creativity and my writing journey. So just don't stop what you love.
I think for me, because there's so much advice out there, and there's always a place to go find things that work for you or things that don't. Not everyone is for every person. The thing that helped me, the thing that absolutely saved me, was finding my community. Find your fellow writers, you know, and especially there were writers that were so much further in their career than I was, that took me on as, like, they were my mentors and they kind of guided me. And that is so, you really need friends. This can be a very lonely job. And because for me, I do this and I do voiceover, but so everything I do is essentially in my little nook in my bedroom by myself. So it's very important to make those connections, because you never know what's going to come from that. But I feel like I've gotten more honest advice from authors. You know, when people read my books and they're like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, or I don't want to point this out. But no, like, other authors, they know what they would be looking for. And you're going to need that feedback, and you're going to need someone to be really kind, you know, who can give you the constructive criticism you need. You know, you aren't going to go like, Goodreads is not for the authors. Goodreads is for the readers. I'm not reading those reviews. I want someone who has been doing this to be like, here is what the problem is. Here's why it's not landing, or here's why it's great, or whatever. I couldn't have done this without other authors. I would not be here without authors who helped and guided and inspired me. So find them, find your people, and join the Discord servers, join the groups, and find us, because I love it. And yeah, I could not do this without them.
I agree with what Bree said. Just just keep going at it, and it doesn't matter if people don't understand it, as long as you, the writer, understands it. That's all that matters, because there are readers out there that will like what you're writing, and learn to trust the characters that come to you. They guide you down a certain road, and you're just like, I don't know about that. Just go with it. You never know where they're going to lead you. It could be a dead end, or it could be, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So that can be fun too. So
I do want to kind of to tag on to what Bree and Conrad said. Like, I firmly believe, and this, might be a little out there to some people, but I firmly believe you wouldn't have gotten the inspiration for the story if there wasn't someone out there who didn't need it. Like, it's here for you because someone in the world needs it, and you're being entrusted to write it. You got to write it.
Goosebumps from that one. That was good.
Yeah.
Thanks for adding that.
The characters come to us, and it's like, why are you coming to me? I don't know what this is, but just trust it and just go with it.
I'm curious what Conrad and Reign and even AL, where their inspiration for their characters come from, or where they're derived from. I know we talked about it a little bit, about it's kind of a manifestation of our experiences with other people, but your books that were presented today in the stories, where did those specific characters, like, how did they manifest?
For my very first book I ever wrote, the main character, it's almost like I was writing a love letter to the most like broken parts of myself. It's me, but it's the me that I felt like so traumatized by. The male main character is 100% my husband, who came in to, save the day and fix everything. Yeah, it's very much that. With a lot of the other books, because the majority of them have female main characters, and it's me exploring some facet of, I wrote a book called Sweet Teeth, and with that, the main character, she left home at 17, she was very awkward, and she didn't have a lot of friends, and I was digging into that aspect of myself, growing up very awkward and feeling misunderstood, and trying to navigate that, looking through the lens of an adult, looking back and going, okay, maybe it was for the best that I didn't fit in, because what would that look like now? Different doesn't mean better. I might have fit in then, but it wouldn't mean I would have a better life today. I wrote a book called Static Saint. That was actually a birthday present for my husband. And so the main character and his wife were heavily based on the dynamic that I felt like we have, as far as, and she's bratty and a pain in the ass, and he's always trying to clean up the messes. Love Like Ruin, the people I'm writing about, I feel like the way they came to me, because I had the idea for the story. I struggled with the characters. I really did. That was hard. I love writing short stories. They feel more satisfying to me because you're done with them so much faster. But sometimes I feel like it's actually harder to write because I'm verbose. I want to go on forever, obviously. And so to condense it and get to the point and get the emotions out and get the story out in a, very narrow window, characters can be a struggle for me there. But I really felt like the more I sat with it, the more that I knew this was, this was Dominic. This was a man who had lost his husband, and he was deeply, deeply, deeply grieving. His whole life had fallen apart. I tend to take I'll listen to my kids talk a lot. I have 4 kids, and they talk. We talk, and we'll read these stories together. We'll go through things, and they'll even get ideas of, what if it was this? What if it was that? And I love to let them inspire me. I think it's such a good way to encourage them as well to pursue their own creativity and really refill that well for themselves. Because initially I try to make my main characters female, especially since I'm going to narrate my own books, and I just feel more comfortable in that aspect. But for this one, again, on occasion, a man shows up, and this one that's what the story needed. So I had to go with it.
The storyline, the plot is what I was so interested in. And I said, oh, I've got to write about this topic because I find it interesting. And the character just kind of, once I said I'm going to write this book, the character just popped up and said, okay, this is what's happening. And he just kind of led me to what he's going through, and I went along for the ride. And like Reign said, sometimes characters can be can be tough to get to know them because they don't want to say anything. Because once they become three-dimensional, it's like, okay, tell me everything. And sometimes they're just like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. So it's just like, wait, you want me to write your story, but you're not going to talk to me. That's not fair. So, if that makes sense.
That's great. It absolutely does. I love the way you presented that. It was fun.
The one character in the story that which is my second book, Samsara, Dylan has a roommate, a male roommate and a coworker, and how would I describe him? I think women would say he is just a dog. He has no filter, says what he wants. He acts like a dog, loves women, but he does not care what people think. And when he spoke, there are times where it's like, wait, I can't write that, but that's what he said, so I have to just do what the characters tell me to do.
So you're almost saying that you form your characters as like people that you personally know, but you've created in your head, but you're talking to this person.
I know it sounds kind of like schizophrenia, but I don't have that, I swear.
No, that's so unique. I love that. No, it's awesome. Me and Ale have actually talked about that before in a sense.
Sometimes characters can come out and they're just fully just who they are, and I'm just typing like Dylan. Once he told me the name and what he did for a living, it was just like, oh, okay, and I understood him completely, his personality, what he feels like, what he thinks about relationships, what lines he won't cross, and it's just like, okay, I think I could like this character if he was like real out in the world. His roommate, I think I'd be like waiting for the ball to drop at any minute.
I love this conversation just because on Instagram, all these authors are like, you need to outline your characters and create your characters and put them to the storyline. I'm like, they come organically. They come to you. You form them. So I love this.
There it is. For me.
Yeah.
And then
precisely. Just like
I want to shake them because they're so stubborn. They don't want to tell me anything.
Yes, exactly.
You're killing me here. I'm trying to write your story. You're not like.
I'll text my husband sometimes and be like, my imaginary friends aren't playing nice today. Like
female for another book I'm working on, and I couldn't tell if she was just a divorced woman or if she was a widow, young. And I just kept thinking, well, maybe she's divorced. But as I was writing it, I was like, no. She was just like, no, you're not making me a divorce. No way. And I had to kind of change things how I was writing to make her a widow. And I was like, okay, sorry. You tell me what you are and I'll write.
You should really consider writing a book about your character development experience, because I really like the way you lay it out and your dynamic of it. Nice in comparison to the very structured outline that Ale brought up.
Yeah, I can't do an outline too much. I can do a rough draft of a scene or a character, but that's just to kind of help me get the scene moving. But usually it changes once I sit down. They'll change it on me. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me this was happening when I was handwriting it all out. Now I'm typing it, and you're like, haha, I'm doing it, and this is what you're going to do.
Who's writing the book? Us or the characters?
Yeah, they'll say stuff, and it's like, I can't say that. Well, it's me. So yes, you can say that because I'm saying it.
My characters, in a sense, they've also just come to me. I was never a fiction writer. The Lattice Scheme was my first book, came out of the blue. The moment that my fingers were on plucking the board like I do, I knew my main character. I knew all of my characters. But as I've been writing, I've discovered that they're all blends of many of the people that I've known across 3 different countries. And so I've been discovering who those people that they're kind of a blend of are. For the page that I chose specifically, Chief Abernathy is literally a blend of my former boss. That's where she gets her last name. It's not the same last name. I had to switch that just in case. But she's got her stringent disposition. She has the appearance of a former neighbor's mother that we had, and a girl that I knew back in marching band. So that's her. And then Alma Morales, who's a very, very special one to me. She's a blend of my two soul sisters, one of which is Filipina, and the other is a Samoan that I know and am very close with both of them, and I keep in contact with them a lot. And then a little bit of my cousin, which for me is strange because I am not close to my cousins, but that's what it is. So it's everybody is a blend. Well, I really appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. And I really do hope that all of the viewers will check out your books. I will have them in links in the description below. You can also find their socials in the description below if they have them. Yeah, definitely pick them up. The Werewolf Queen. Reign, what was yours again?
Love Like Ruin.
Pick that up. And Conrad?
Samsara.
Samsara. All right. Yeah, those will all be in the description below. And again, thank you for joining this podcast episode. I hope that you'll subscribe and keep supporting indie authors.